The moment Chidinma's ex-fiancé's fist connected with her face in that Seoul mall, three things happened simultaneously. Her lips split open, spraying blood across white marble. Security cameras captured everything from 7 different angles, and her phone started vibrating with a call from the one man in Korea you never ever want to make angry, Park Min-seok, her mafia boss husband, whose voice was already dropping to that lethal whisper that meant someone's world was about to end. Derek had just assaulted the underground king's wife, and his 6-minute head start was already running out. Chidinma looked up from the floor, her black dress torn at the shoulder, dark curls wild with glass shards, at the man standing over her. Derek Cole, her ex. The man who'd left her homeless, pregnant, and broken in a Chicago emergency room 3 years ago. "Still playing victim, huh?" Derek snarled, loud enough for the gathering crowd to hear. "Still the same pathetic, poor little beggar who thought she could trap me." He had no idea who she was now. No idea that the desperate girl who'd begged him not to leave, who'd lost their baby from stress and starvation, who'd slept on a shelter cot with $17 in her bank account, was gone. No idea about the platinum wedding band hidden beneath her leather glove, the penthouse overlooking the Han River she'd left that morning, or the black American Express card in her purse with Park Min-seok's name embossed in silver. And Derek definitely had no idea about the man whose name was now legally attached to hers. The man whose security team was currently closing in from 3 different directions. The man whose phone was vibrating in her clutch right now. Park Min-seok, her husband. Seoul's most feared underground king. As Chidinma's trembling fingers answered the call and Park's deadly calm voice asked in Korean, "Yobo, are you hurt?" She watched understanding start to drain the color from Derek's face. He'd just punched the wrong woman. And in approximately 6 minutes, when Park's black motorcade pulled into this mall's underground garage, Derek Cole was going to learn a lesson about consequences that would follow him across 2 continents. But he didn't know that yet. Right now, in this moment frozen between violence and vengeance, he still thought she was nothing. That was about to change. But before Park's black motorcade arrives and Derek learns exactly what happens when you touch Seoul's most protected woman, you need to understand something. This story gets darker, more satisfying, and more devastating than you can imagine. If you're not subscribed, you're gambling that YouTube will show you part 2. And trust me, the algorithm doesn't care about your justice boner. Hit that subscribe button right now, because what happens in the next hour will make this punch look like mercy. 3 hours earlier. Chidinma stood in their walk-in closet, sorting through rows of clothes that still felt like they belonged to someone else. Silk blouses, cashmere sweaters, designer dresses with tags that made her stomach flip. Despite living here for 8 months, she still reached for the simplest things. Old survival instincts didn't disappear just because your address changed. "You're doing it again." She turned to find Park Min-seok leaning in the doorway, already dressed in a charcoal 3-piece suit that probably cost more than her first car. He was devastating in the morning light, sharp jaw, dark eyes that missed nothing, presence that commanded rooms without him saying a word, dangerous to everyone, gentle only with her. Doing what? She pulled out a simple black wrap dress, choosing like you're still shopping at secondhand stores. He crossed to her, sliding his arms around her waist from behind. His reflection joined hers in the full-length mirror. Beauty and the Beast, she'd once joked. He hadn't laughed. "You're the beauty," he'd said. "I'm just the bastard lucky enough to keep you." "I like simple things," she said now, leaning back against his chest. "I like spoiling you." He kissed her neck, right over her pulse point. "Humor me. You humor me by loving me exactly as I am." His arms tightened. In the mirror, his expression softened in that way it only did for her, like ice melting in sunlight. "Always." She turned in his arms, straightening his tie even though it didn't need straightening, just an excuse to touch him. "You have that meeting with the Busan delegation?" "Unfortunately." His jaw tightened. "Which means I won't be able to go with you to the mall." Park, I'm just buying Christmas gifts. I'll be fine. Something flickered in his eyes, that protective obsession she'd learned to recognize. Take Jae-sung and Tae-min with you. I don't need bodyguards to go shopping. Chidinma. His voice dropped to that tone, the one that meant this wasn't a negotiation. This was Park Min-seok, underground king of Seoul, speaking. Not just her husband. You know what I am. You know what I do. You know the enemies that creates. You don't leave this penthouse without security. Non-negotiable. She cupped his face, feeling the tension in his jaw. Okay, I'll take them. The steel left his shoulders. He exhaled like she'd granted him a gift instead of giving in to common sense. Thank you. He checked his watch, solid platinum, simple but obscenely expensive, and swore softly in Korean. I have to go, I'll be home by 6, we have reservations at 7. Where? That dangerous smile, the one that made her stomach flip. It's a surprise. Wear the red dress, the one with the slit. Heat flooded her cheeks even as she smiled. You're insatiable. Only for you. One more kiss, deep and thorough, his hand cradling the back of her head like she was made of glass. When he pulled back, his thumb traced her bottom lip. Saranghae. I love you too. She watched him leave. This man who terrified half of Seoul, but who'd spent 20 minutes last night trying to pronounce her mother's name correctly in Igbo. This man who'd bid 200 million won for one dinner with her at a charity auction and had somehow convinced her that she deserved to be loved like she was oxygen. 3 years earlier, Chicago. Chidinma Okafor arrived in America at 22 with a student visa, a scholarship to a community college, and dreams bigger than the single suitcase she carried. Her mother had sold her best wrapper to help pay for the plane ticket. Her father had pressed his calloused hands to her cheeks and said, "Make us proud, NWAM. Send money when you can." She'd promised she would. She always kept her promises. Derek Cole walked into her economics class 6 weeks later with a smile that could sell anything, and eventually did, including the fantasy that Chidinma was special, that he loved her, that together they'd build something beautiful. You're different, he'd said on their third date, tucking a curl behind her ear. Smart, driven, real, not like these shallow American girls. She'd believed him. God help her, she'd believed every word. Within 3 months, she'd moved into his apartment. Within 6, she was working double shifts at a diner while he developed his startup, a vague tech venture that always needed just one more investor, one more month, one more infusion of her tips and wages. Baby, I just need 500 to get the prototype finished, he'd say, kissing her forehead. Once this takes off, I'll pay you back double, triple. You'll never have to work another night shift again. So she'd wire money home to Nigeria with one hand and hand her savings to Derek with the other, stretching herself thinner and thinner, believing in a future he painted in broad, beautiful strokes. The pregnancy test showed positive on a Tuesday morning in February. 2 pink lines that changed everything. Chidinma had stared at it in the bathroom of the diner during her break, hands shaking, mind racing through possibilities. They'd struggled, yes, but a baby, their baby, could be the beginning of something real, something permanent. She'd imagined telling her parents, imagined Derek's face lighting up, imagined a small family built from love and sacrifice. She'd been so stupid. You're keeping it? Derek had said that night, his voice flat. Not our baby. Not we'll figure it out. Just it. Chidinma, I can't afford a kid right now. We can barely afford rent. Because you haven't worked in 4 months, she'd whispered, the words tasting like betrayal even as she spoke them. His face had hardened. So this is about money? After everything I've done for you? I let you live here, Let me? The anger had felt foreign in her mouth. Derek, I pay for everything. The rent, the food, the utilities. Then maybe you should have been more careful. He'd grabbed his jacket. I need air. We'll talk about this later. later never came. 3 days after that fight, Chidinma came home to an empty apartment. Derek's clothes were gone. His laptop, his sneakers, his collection of vintage watches she'd bought him for his birthday, all gone. He'd left her the furniture she'd saved up for, the bills in her name, and a credit card debt she didn't know existed until the collection's calls started. The eviction notice came 2 weeks later. She'd begged the landlord for more time, shown him her work schedule, promised she'd catch up. He'd looked at her swollen belly and shaken his head. I need tenants who can pay, not sob stories. She'd moved into her car, then a friend's couch, then another friend's floor. Each move shorter than the last as her pregnancy showed and her welcome wore thin. She'd stopped eating regular meals, crackers and ramen stretched across days, her tips going to pay minimums on debts Derek had left behind. At night, curled in the back of her Toyota, she'd felt the baby move and whispered apologies into the darkness. The bleeding started on a Sunday. She'd been at work, carrying a tray of breakfast plates, when the cramp hit so hard she'd dropped everything. Glass shattered, eggs splattered across tile, and blood, so much blood, soaked through her black work pants. The ER at Cook County Hospital was a war zone. She'd waited 4 hours on a plastic chair, hemorrhaging, alone, while gunshot victims and overdoses took priority. By the time they'd called her name, she could barely stand. I'm sorry, the doctor had said, not unkindly, after the ultrasound. There's no heartbeat. Your body is rejecting the pregnancy. We'll need to do a D&C. The procedure was quick, clinical, efficient. A nurse with kind eyes had held her hand through the worst of it, whispering, Breathe, honey. Just breathe. Chidinma had wanted to ask her name, had wanted to thank her, had wanted to scream that this wasn't supposed to happen, that she'd done everything right, that she'd loved this baby, that she'd sacrificed everything. But the words wouldn't come. Only tears. They'd discharged her 6 hours later with a list of warning signs, a prescription she couldn't afford, and instructions to follow up with her OB-GYN. She'd stood outside the hospital in the February cold, watching her breath fog the air, and realized she had $17 in her account and nowhere to go. She'd tried calling Derek one last time. His number was disconnected, his social media deleted. He'd erased himself from her life as efficiently as the doctor had removed the baby from her body. That night, sitting in her car in a grocery store parking lot, Chidinma had made a choice. She could die here, not literally, but spiritually, emotionally, become a ghost of the girl who'd left Nigeria with stars in her eyes. Or she could survive. She chose survival. Not forgiveness, not forgetting, not even healing, not yet. Just the raw animal determination to wake up the next morning and the morning after that, to claw her way back from the edge Derek had pushed her toward. She'd called her cousin in Seoul that same night. I need a fresh start, she'd whispered into the phone. Anywhere but here. 2 months later, she'd boarded a plane with a teaching contract, a battered suitcase, and a heart held together with spite and stubbornness. She'd left Chicago, left the debts, left the ghost of the baby she'd lost, and the girl who'd loved Derek Cole. But she'd never forgotten. And she'd certainly never forgiven. Now standing in a Seoul luxury mall 3 years later, watching Derek walk toward her with that same careless smile, Chidinma felt every buried memory surge to the surface like a wound reopening. The girl he'd abandoned would have run, would have hidden, would have made herself small. But that girl was dead, and the woman she'd become was about to teach Derek Cole the most expensive lesson of his life. Seoul hit Chidinma like a second chance wrapped in neon and concrete. She'd arrived with $847 in her account, a teaching contract at a language academy in Gangnam, and the kind of desperate hope that comes from having nothing left to lose. The city was massive, chaotic, beautiful in ways Chicago had never been. Ancient palaces shadowed by glass skyscrapers, street food vendors next to luxury boutiques, a place where reinvention felt possible. Her cousin had found her a room in Nowon, an hour north by subway. Not an apartment, a room. One of 3 in a cramped flat shared with 2 other immigrant women, Lin from China, and Fatima from Pakistan. They split the $600 rent 3 ways, shared a bathroom the size of a closet, and took turns cooking on a hot plate because the kitchen was barely functional. It was the best thing that had happened to Chidinma in months. "You're the teacher?" Lin had asked that first night, stirring instant noodles. "The one who speaks 3 languages?" "4, if you count broken Korean," Chidinma had said, trying to smile, trying to remember how. "Then you'll be fine here," Fatima had said, handing her chopsticks. "Seoul rewards workers. You work, you survive." So Chidinma worked, taught English at the academy from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., tutored businessmen in conversational Igbo and French on weeknights, took translation gigs on weekends, restaurant menus, business emails, immigration documents. She slept 5 hours a night and sent $200 home to Nigeria every month without fail, even when it meant eating convenience store kimbap for a week straight. But somewhere between the subway commutes and the late-night lesson plans, something unexpected happened. She started smiling again. Real smiles. The kind that reached her eyes. She'd catch herself laughing at Lin's terrible puns or dancing to Afrobeats while cleaning their shared kitchen. She'd bow to the elderly woman at the corner store who always gave her extra kimchi. She'd learned to say "감사합니다" with the right inflection and "죄송합니다" when she bumped into someone on the crowded train. Seoul hadn't healed her, but it had given her space to breathe. And breathing, she'd discovered, was the first step toward living. The charity gala job came 6 months after her arrival. A high-end event at the Shilla Hotel needed translators for their international guests, English, French, and Korean required. The pay was exceptional, $800 for one night's work. Chidinma had borrowed a black dress from Fatima, practiced her formal Korean until her tongue ached, and showed up 2 hours early. She'd expected luxury. She hadn't expected him. Park Min-seok entered the ballroom like winter itself. Cold, inevitable, impossible to ignore. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than her entire year's rent, moved with the controlled grace of a predator, and commanded silence without saying a word. The crowd parted for him automatically. Even the event organizers bowed deeper. "Who is that?" Chidinma had whispered to her supervisor. The woman's face had gone pale. "Park Min-seok, don't stare, don't approach, just stay out of his way." But fate, apparently, had other plans. The gala's centerpiece was a charity auction, dinner dates with eligible bachelors to raise money for children's hospitals. Chidinma had been assigned to translate bids from the French ambassador when Park Min-seok's voice cut through the room. 200 million won! The auctioneer had stuttered. The crowd had gasped. Chidinma had frozen, realizing with dawning horror that he was bidding on her, the international package that included dinner with one of the translators as a cultural exchange experience. She'd been valued at maybe 10 million won. Park had just bid 20 times that. Going once, twice, sold to Mr. Park Min-seok. He'd walked up to claim his prize, and Chidinma had found herself face to face with the most dangerous man in Seoul. Up close, he was devastating. Sharp jaw, dark eyes that seemed to see straight through her, presence that made her lungs forget how to work. "You don't have to do this," she'd whispered in Korean. "That's too much money for—" "I know exactly what I'm paying for," he'd interrupted, his voice low and controlled. Then, studying her face, "You're not afraid of me." "Should I be?" Something flickered in his eyes, almost like interest. "Most people are. I've survived worse than scary men in expensive suits." The corner of his mouth had twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. "Have dinner with me. Not because I paid, because I'm asking." That dinner had turned into another, then coffee, then late-night walks along the Han River, where Park Min-seok, feared underground king, ruthless businessman, man who made grown men weep, told her about his mother's kimchi recipe and asked about her family in Nigeria. He never asked about her scars, never pushed when she went quiet, never demanded more than she could give. Instead, he gave respect, space, protection. She didn't ask for, but desperately needed. When she'd mentioned her debt from America, it had disappeared within a week. When she'd worried about her housing situation, he'd offered her the penthouse guest room. No strings, no expectations, just safety. Why? She'd asked one night, 3 months into whatever they were becoming. Why me? Park had looked at her like she'd asked why the sun rose. Because you're still standing. Because you send money home to your family even when you're eating ramen. Because you smile at strangers and learn languages and refuse to let the world make you cruel. His hand had cupped her face with devastating gentleness. Because you're strong, Chidinma. And I've spent my whole life surrounded by people who only know how to break. She'd kissed him then, soft, tentative, terrified. He'd kissed her back like she was oxygen. Their love story hadn't been explosive. It had been slow, deliberate, built on trust instead of passion, respect instead of need. Park had courted her like she was royalty, waited until she was ready, made her feel cherished instead of conquered. 6 months after that first dinner, he'd proposed in their apartment. No crowd, no cameras, just him on one knee with a platinum band and a voice that shook when he said, "Saranghai, marry me." They'd married a week later in a private ceremony with only the officiant present. No guests, no announcement. Just vows spoken in the early morning light and a kiss that tasted like new beginnings. The world knew Park Min-seok as ruthless, cold, dangerous. Chidinma knew him as the man who memorized her coffee order, who called her mother Amma in broken Igbo, who held her through nightmares and never once asked her to be anything other than exactly who she was. He'd given her safety, she'd given him softness, and together they'd built something neither of them had believed possible, a love that didn't hurt. But standing in that mall, watching Derek approach with that predatory smile, Chidinma realized their carefully built peace was about to shatter. And this time, she wouldn't face her demons alone. Chidinma woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of rain against floor-to-ceiling windows. For a moment, that precious space between sleep and consciousness, she forgot where she was. Then Park's arm tightened around her waist, his breath warm against her neck, and reality settled over her like expensive silk. She was home, safe, loved. The penthouse still felt surreal even after 8 months. 40 floors above Seoul, glass and marble, and space that seemed to stretch forever. A kitchen bigger than her entire childhood home in Lagos. A bathroom with heated floors and a tub that could fit 3 people. Closets full of clothes she'd never dreamed of owning. But the most unbelievable part wasn't the luxury. It was the man who shared it with her. "You're thinking too loud," Park murmured against her shoulder, his Korean rough with sleep. "It's Saturday. Thinking is illegal on Saturdays." She smiled, threading her fingers through his. "Is that a law? I'll make it one." He kissed her neck, then, feeling her tense slightly, immediately gentled, just holding her, never pushing. Always reading her like a book, only he knew how to translate. This was the Park Min-seok the world never saw. Not the underground king who made politicians nervous. Not the businessman who'd built an empire on razor-thin lines between legal and lethal. Just Park. The man who'd spent 20 minutes last night trying to pronounce her niece's name correctly. The man who bought her favorite Nigerian snacks from an import shop an hour away. The man who was terrifying to everyone except her. "Coffee's ready," he said, pressing one more kiss to her temple before sliding out of bed. "I made it the way you like. Too much milk, borderline offensive to actual coffee drinkers." "It's called a latte, you snob." "It's called hot milk with coffee flavoring." But he was smiling as he said it, that rare soft expression that made her chest ache. She watched him move through their bedroom, lean muscle, controlled power, dangerous grace wrapped in pajama pants and a white t-shirt. He caught her staring and raised an eyebrow. See something you like, Mrs. Park? Heat flooded her cheeks. 8 months married, and he could still make her blush like a teenager. Maybe. Good. He disappeared into the kitchen, returning with 2 mugs. Hers, pale with foam art he'd clearly attempted and failed at. His, black as midnight, strong enough to strip paint. Because you're stuck with me. They drank coffee on the balcony despite the rain, Park's arm around her shoulders, Seoul sprawling gray and alive below them. These moments, quiet, domestic, absurdly normal, were her favorite. When the man who owned half the city's underground was just her husband, stealing sips from her mug and complaining about the weather. You have that board meeting Monday? She asked. Unfortunately. His jaw tightened. The Busan family is pushing back on the territory agreements. It'll be political. She knew what that meant. Dangerous. The kind of meeting where Park wore his coldest face and reminded people why crossing him was a fatal mistake. Be careful, she whispered. He turned her face toward his, thumb brushing her cheekbone, always. I have too much to come home to. Then, studying her with those eyes that missed nothing, you're scared. I just worry. About me? He almost smiled. Chidinma, I've been doing this since I was 16. I'll be fine. I know, She stopped, the words tangling with memories she'd never shared. The fear of losing someone, of being abandoned again, of waking up one day to find this life was a dream and she was back in Chicago, alone and bleeding. Park's expression softened with understanding he shouldn't have, knowledge she'd never given him. Tell me, he said quietly. Whatever happened before, whoever hurt you, tell me their name. Her breath caught. Park, you don't have to. His forehead pressed to hers. Not until you're ready. But know this, I will wait forever if that's what you need. And when you do tell me, there won't be judgment. Only me, loving you exactly as you are, scars and all. She'd almost told him then, almost let the words spill. Derek, the baby, the hospital, all of it. But fear locked her throat. What if he saw her differently? What if knowing how badly she'd let herself be used made him think less of her? So instead, she kissed him, soft and deep, and full of everything she couldn't say. I love you, she whispered against his lips. Saranghae, he whispered back. More than you'll ever know. Later that afternoon, she'd mentioned the mall trip. Just casual Christmas shopping, gifts for her family in Nigeria, something nice for Lynn and Fatima. Park had looked up from his laptop, that protective instinct flaring immediately. I'll come with you. Baby, you have prep for Monday. I'll just be a few hours. Then take Jae-sung and Tae-min. Park, it's a mall. I don't need bodyguards to buy scarves. His expression had gone carefully neutral, the face he made when he was holding back an argument. Chidinma, please, for me. She'd seen the fear beneath the control. The man who'd lost everyone he'd ever loved before her. The man who checked her location obsessively and called twice a day when they were apart. Not controlling, just terrified. Okay, she'd agreed, cupping his face. I'll take them. The relief in his eyes had been immediate. He'd pulled her into his lap, holding her like she might disappear. Thank you. I know I'm paranoid. I know you're capable, but the thought of something happening to you, nothing will happen, she'd promised. It's just shopping. She'd believed it. God help her, she'd actually believed it. Across the city, in a hotel bar in Itaewon, Derek Cole laughed at something his fiancée said and ordered another whiskey. He was in Seoul for a marketing conference, 3 days of networking, pitching his consulting firm, and playing the part of the successful American entrepreneur. Life had been good since Chicago. New city, new name on his business cards, new woman who didn't ask too many questions about his past. He'd almost forgotten about Chidinma entirely. The pregnant ex who'd gotten too clingy, too needy, too much, almost. I need to hit the Gangnam Mall tomorrow. His fiancée, Ashley, pretty and rich and conveniently trusting. said, scrolling through her phone. There's a bag I want. You'll come with me? Derek had shrugged. Sure, why not? He had no idea that decision would cost him everything. No idea that fate was about to collect a debt 3 years overdue. No idea that the woman he'd left bleeding in a Chicago ER was now the beloved wife of Seoul's most dangerous man. Tomorrow, in a mall decorated with Christmas lights and false cheer, the past and present would collide with the force of a bullet, and only one of them would walk away unbroken. The recognition hit Derek's face in stages. First, confusion. The elegant black woman in the designer dress looked familiar but out of context. Second, disbelief. It couldn't be her. Not here. Not like this. Third, that ugly smile Chidinma remembered from their worst fights, the one that said he'd found a weakness to exploit. Holy shit! Chidinma? He laughed, loud enough to turn heads. Chidinma Okafor? Is that really you? She felt Jae-sung shift closer behind her, sensed Tae-min's hand move toward his jacket. But she raised a hand slightly. Wait, because maybe this could stay civil. Maybe Derek would just walk away. She'd forgotten who he was, what he was. Derek, her voice came out steady, cold. I didn't expect to see you here. Seoul's full of surprises. He stepped closer, eyes raking over her dress, her bags, her subtle jewelry with an expression that made her skin crawl. Look at you, all dressed up, playing pretend in someone else's clothes? I'm not playing anything. Right. His laugh was cruel. Because we both know you're the same broke girl who used to beg me for rent money. What, you find some desperate Korean guy to pay your bills now? That your new hustle? The words hit like acid. Around them, shoppers slowed, phones coming up. The universal instinct to record conflict, to witness someone else's pain. You need to leave, Chidinma said quietly. Now. Or what? Derek's eyes flashed with that familiar rage, the kind that had always simmered beneath his charm. You gonna call your boyfriend? Tell him how you trapped me 3 years ago? How you tried to baby trap me into staying with your pathetic... Stop. Her voice broke. She hated that it broke. Hated that 3 years of healing could crack open this fast. But Derek smelled blood in the water. He always did. You know what? I bet he doesn't know, does he? Derek's voice rose, performing for the growing crowd. I bet you didn't tell him you got yourself knocked up to trap a man. That you played victim when I refused to let you ruin my life. Did you tell him how clingy you got? How crazy? How you stalked me after I left? That's not... Chidinma's hands shook. You left me homeless. You stole my money. I left a leech who was bleeding me dry, Derek shouted. Then louder to the crowd. She's a professional victim, always has been. Probably told her new man some sob story to get him to pay for all this. He gestured at her dress with disgust. Some guys are stupid enough to fall for it. Mr. Park is not... She stopped, realizing too late what she'd said. Derek's eyes narrowed. Mr. Park? You actually married some idiot? God, I feel sorry for him. He has no idea what kind of manipulative... Enough. Jae-sung stepped forward. Sir, you need to leave. Now. Oh, she's got bodyguards now? Derek's laugh turned manic. Really committed to the act, huh, Chidinma? What did you do? Find some old rich guy who... I said leave. Chidinma's voice was ice. Before you regret this. Regret what? Derek's face twisted with rage. You think you scare me? You think your little security guards scare me? You're still the same pathetic girl who lost my baby because you were too stupid to... The slap came before Chidinma realized her hand had moved. The crack echoed through the atrium like a gunshot. For one heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then Derek's fist connected with her jaw. The impact sent her stumbling backward into the Christmas ornament display. Red glass exploded around her like detonating rubies. Her head cracked against the metal stand. Blood sprayed from her split lip across white marble as she collapsed, her dress tearing, her elbow splitting open on impact. The mall erupted in screams. Phones shot up like a constellation of witnesses. Jae-sung and Tae-min moved, but Derek was already standing over her, face purple with rage, spitting words she could barely hear through the ringing in her ears. "Stay down where you belong, you worthless!" The sentence died as Tae-min's hand locked around Derek's throat, lifting him off his feet. Jae-sung was already on his phone, voice deadly calm. "Hyungnim, we have a situation. Your wife, she's hurt." Through the haze of pain and shock and blood in her mouth, Chidinma heard the words that would change everything. Someone struck Mrs. Park. The temperature in the atrium seemed to drop 10 degrees. Security appeared from nowhere, blocking exits. Mall management materialized, faces pale with terror. Someone was screaming about calling the police. Phones kept recording, capturing everything: the blood, the shattered glass, the black woman in the torn designer dress, and the white man who'd put her on the floor. Chidinma tried to sit up. Failed. Her vision swam. Somewhere far away, she heard sirens. Then, cutting through chaos like a blade through silk, a voice she knew better than her own heartbeat. "Where is she?" Park Min-seok's voice, quiet, controlled, absolutely lethal. The crowd parted like he was Moses and they were the Red Sea. He moved through the atrium in a black suit and fury so cold it burned, 4 more men in black flanking him. His eyes found her on the floor, took in the blood, the torn dress, the shattered glass, and something in his expression went beyond rage into a place that had no name. He dropped to his knees beside her, hands shaking as they cupped her face. "Yobo," he whispered, voice cracking on the endearment. "Who did this? Who touched you?" "Park." Her voice came out broken, ashamed, terrified of what came next. His thumb brushed blood from her lip with devastating gentleness. Then his eyes lifted to Jae-sung, and the gentle man vanished entirely. "Who touched my wife?" Jae-sung's hand tightened on Derek's collar, forcing him forward. "This man, Hyungnim." Park stood slowly, turning to face Derek with the kind of calm that preceded executions. "Name." I didn't. She attacked me first. "Name. Derek Cole. But listen. She's lying. She's—" "Lock down the mall," Park said quietly. "No one leaves. No one deletes footage. Get me every camera angle in the building." His men moved instantly, spreading out like a military operation. Then back to Derek. "You made a mistake today, Mr. Cole. In approximately 30 seconds, you're going to understand exactly how costly." "I don't know who you think you are," Derek tried, voice shaking. "But you can't just—" Chidinma's whisper cut through everything. "He's my ex." Park went perfectly still. "What?" "From Chicago. 3 years ago. He's—" Her voice broke on a sob she'd been holding back since the first punch. "He's the one who left me pregnant, who took my money, who—" She couldn't finish. Couldn't breathe through the shame and pain and trauma flooding back. Park's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes went black and endless, a void where rage lived in absolute zero. He looked at Derek like he was already dead. Then, voice soft as falling snow, "Get him out of my sight before I forget why I don't kill people in public." As they dragged Derek toward the security offices, his screams echoing off marble, Park knelt beside Chidinma again and gathered her into his arms with infinite care. "I've got you," he murmured against her hair. "Serenghae, I've got you. And I promise you, on everything I am, he will never touch you again." She believed him. God help Derek Cole, she believed him. The security office was soundproofed, a detail Derek Cole would come to appreciate in the worst possible way. Park Min-seok entered 20 minutes after Chidinma had been taken to a private medical suite upstairs. 20 minutes he'd spent holding his wife while a doctor stitched her elbow and confirmed no concussion. 20 minutes watching her shake and cry and whisper apologies like any of this was her fault. 20 minutes for his rage to crystallize into something colder than murder, more permanent than death. He'd kissed her forehead, promised to return, and walked out of that medical suite a different man than the one who'd entered it. Now he stood in the security office, studying the man zip-tied to a chair like he was examining an insect. Derek's nose was bleeding from where Taemin had been a bit too enthusiastic during transport. His expensive shirt was torn. He looked smaller than he had in the atrium. Fear did that to people. "Mr. Cole," Park said quietly, pulling up a chair. Not sitting yet, just holding it. "Do you know who I am?" Some kind of gangster, I heard." Park Min-sok. He let the name hang in the air, watched recognition and terror flood Derek's face. "Ah, so you have heard of me." "Listen, I didn't know she was... I thought she was just some what?" Park's voice could have frozen helium. Finish that sentence very carefully. Derek's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "I didn't know she was your wife." Would it have mattered? Park finally sat, crossing one leg over the other with casual elegance. "Would you have hesitated before punching a woman in public if she belonged to someone less influential?" "I didn't mean to. She hit me first." "I've watched the footage." Park gestured to the monitors lining the wall, each frozen on different angles of the assault. 7 different camera angles, 43 witness phones. I've had my technical team pull everything in the last 16 minutes, so let's be very clear. I know exactly what happened. The only question now is what happens next." He leaned forward, hands clasped. "Tell me about Chicago, Mr. Cole." Derek's face went white. "What?" "3 years ago, you were dating my wife, then she got pregnant." Park's voice remained conversational, but his eyes were dead. "Walk me through what happened next." That's private." "Nothing is private from me." Park pulled out his phone, scrolled with deliberate slowness. "I've had investigators on the phone with Chicago for the last 17 minutes. Fascinating what money and urgency can uncover. Your old landlord was very talkative. So was the hospital that treated Chidinma's miscarriage." He looked up. "Did you know she hemorrhaged for 4 hours in a waiting room before they saw her? That she lost our baby? Sorry, your baby, because she'd been starving herself to pay debts you'd created in her name?" "I didn't force her to." Park's fist slammed into the table. The sound cracked like a gunshot. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped to a whisper, more terrifying than any scream. "You left her homeless, pregnant, alone. You stole $17,000 from her in fraudulent credit cards. You disappeared while she was losing your child in an emergency room with no one to hold her hand but a stranger." Each sentence landed like a bullet. "And today, when you saw her again, your first instinct was to hit her. She's lying about..." "She told me nothing." Park's smile was razor-edged. "Chidinma has kept every detail of you buried for 3 years. Too ashamed, too traumatized. I learned about you exactly 18 minutes ago from hospital records and credit reports, which means she protected you from me without even knowing it." He stood, buttoning his jacket with deliberate care. "You should have stayed in America, Mr. Cole, because now you've committed assault on Korean soil, against my wife, in front of hundreds of witnesses, and I need you to understand something very important." Park leaned down until they were eye level. "I'm not going to kill you. Death would be mercy. What I'm going to do is worse. I'm going to let you live, and I'm going to make you wish, every single day for the rest of your miserable life, that I hadn't." The execution began before Derek left the mall. Hour 1. Park's financial team froze every account connected to Derek's name. Credit cards declined mid-transaction. His hotel charged his emergency card, also frozen. His flight home the next day? Canceled for non-payment. Hour 2. The mall footage leaked. Not to news stations, those could be controlled. To social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. 15 different angles of a white man punching a black woman in a luxury mall, screaming about her being a professional victim. The internet did what the internet does best. It hunted. Hour 3. His company's HR department received an anonymous email. Attached, court records from Chicago showing outstanding fraud warrants, credit card theft. 3 women Derek had scammed before Chidinma, all with similar stories of financial abuse and abandonment. His boss called 30 seconds after opening the attachment. "You're fired. Don't come back. We're pressing charges for falsifying your background check." Hour 4. His fiancée, Ashley, pretty and rich and trusting, received a different package. Bank statements showing Derek had opened credit cards in her name. Screenshots of dating profiles he'd maintained while engaged. Testimonies from women he'd used and discarded across 3 states. She posted her breakup statement at 4:47 p.m. Seoul time. It went viral within minutes. Hour 5. Traditional media picked up the story. American man assaults woman in Seoul luxury mall. The video was everywhere. His face was everywhere. Comments flooded in by the thousands. "Imagine hitting someone and finding out her husband owns the city. That man is finished. Korean mafia husband about to end this man's whole career. She's literally wearing designer and he called her broke. Hour 6. The women from Chicago started coming forward, emboldened by Chidinma's footage. One by one, they told their stories. The pattern was identical: charm, exploitation, pregnancy scares or actual pregnancies, abandonment, debt. Derek Cole wasn't just an abuser, he was a serial predator. In the penthouse, Chidinma sat curled on the couch, Park's laptop open in front of her, watching her private nightmare become public vindication. Park sat beside her, one arm around her shoulders, his other hand holding his phone as updates poured in from his team. "His passport's been flagged," Park said quietly. "He can't leave Korea without clearing the assault charges, which he can't afford to do because his accounts are frozen. His lawyer dropped him an hour ago." Chidinma said nothing. Just watched the view counter climb on the mall video. 3 million, 5 million, 10 million. "The foundation from Chicago, the one for pregnant women in crisis, they want to use his case for awareness," Park continued. "They're asking if you'll speak. You don't have to." "I want to," she whispered. Park pressed a kiss to her temple. "Then you will, and I'll be right beside you." On the screen, another notification. Derek's LinkedIn had been deleted. His social media scrubbed. Too late. Screenshots lived forever. "Is this too much?" Park asked softly. "Tell me if this is too much." Chidinma thought about the hospital, the eviction, the nights in her car, the baby she'd lost because Derek had valued money over her life. "No," she said. "It's not enough." Park's arm tightened around her. "Then we're just getting started." Somewhere across the city, in a hotel room he could no longer afford, Derek Cole realized that Park Min-seok hadn't been exaggerating. Death would have been mercy. This was justice. The video hit 100 million views in 72 hours. Chidinma watched the number climb from the safety of Park's penthouse, her phone burning with notifications she couldn't bring herself to silence. The footage had transcended borders, languages, demographics. Everyone had an opinion about the black woman on the marble floor and the white man who'd put her there. Most of the comments made her cry. "I felt this in my soul. My ex did the same thing, left me pregnant, broke, blamed me for everything." That moment when she said, "He's my ex," and you could hear the trauma, I've been there. Korean husband said, "Not today, Satan," and I respect that energy. She's wearing designer and he still called her poor. That's how abusers work. They can't accept you survived them. But some comments made her chest tight with different emotions. Gold digger got what she deserved. Probably lied about everything. She hit him first. Convenient how they don't show that part. Asian fetish is real. She just found a different wallet to leech from. Park found her at 3 a.m., sitting on the bathroom floor with her phone, tears streaming silently down her face as she scrolled through hundreds of messages from strangers. Yobo. He slid down beside her, gently taking the phone. You need to stop reading these. They think I'm lying, her voice cracked. They think I trapped you, that I'm exactly what Derek said I was. They're wrong. Park cupped her face, forcing her to look at him. And the opinion of people who've never met you, who don't know your story, who judge trauma they've never experienced, those opinions are worthless. But what if, she hiccuped on a sob, what if they're right? What if I did let myself be used? What if I was stupid and weak and… Stop. His voice was steel wrapped in velvet. Chidinma, look at me. Look at me. She met his eyes. You were 22 years old in a foreign country with no support system. You loved someone who weaponized that love. You worked yourself to exhaustion trying to survive. You lost a child and still chose to keep living. His thumbs wiped away her tears. That's not weakness. That's the strongest thing I've ever witnessed. And anyone who says otherwise can answer to me personally. I should have left him sooner. I should have seen. Abusers are experts at making you think their cruelty is your fault. That's how they work. Park pulled her into his lap, holding her like she was something precious. You didn't fail, Sarang. He did. And now the whole world knows it. She buried her face in his shoulder and cried, deep, wrenching sobs that she'd been holding back for 3 years. Park just held her, one hand stroking her hair, the other rubbing circles on her back, whispering reassurances in Korean she only half understood but felt completely. When the tears finally slowed, she whispered, "What do I do now?" "Whatever you need to heal," Park said simply. "Hide, speak, fight, rest. I'll support whatever you choose." The decision came 3 days later, watching a news segment about the Seoul Mall assault. A reporter interviewed a domestic violence advocate who said, "What's remarkable about this case is how many women have come forward with similar stories. Not about this specific man, but about the pattern: financial abuse, reproductive coercion, being blamed for the abuse itself. Mrs. Park's experience is not unique. It's epidemic, and her survival is giving other women permission to speak." Chidinma had stared at the screen, something shifting in her chest. Her pain wasn't unique. Her survival wasn't either. But her platform was. "I want to do something," she'd told Park that night over dinner. "Not just survive, not just move on. I want to help." Park had set down his chopsticks, giving her his complete attention. "Tell me what you need. A foundation. For women like I was. Women financially abused by partners. Women who lose pregnancies from stress. Women who need housing and legal help and therapy and someone to believe them." The words came faster, vision crystallizing. Not just Korean women, immigrant women, Black women, women the system ignores because they don't look like the perfect victim. "Done," Park said immediately. She blinked. "You don't want to think about it? It'll be expensive. It'll take time and…" "Chidinma." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "I've spent my entire adult life building an empire. Money, power, influence, all of it felt hollow until I met you. If you want to use our resources to help women survive what you survived, there is nothing I would rather fund." Her eyes filled with tears again. "Really? Really?" He smiled, soft and genuine. "Besides, I like the idea of my wife being more terrifying than I am. The underground king and the woman who saves lives he could never touch will be unstoppable." The sanctuary house opened 4 months later. A renovated building near Seoul Station, 6 floors of safety, emergency housing on floors 1 and 2, legal aid and counseling on 3, job training and financial literacy on 4. childcare, and medical services on 5. The 6th floor was Chidinma's office and a communal space for residents. Bright, warm, filled with plants and soft furniture, and the kind of comfort she desperately needed in Chicago. The opening day press conference was packed. Cameras everywhere, reporters shouting questions in 3 languages. Chidinma stood at the podium in a blue dress, Park slightly behind her in his customary black suit, and spoke in a voice that only shook slightly. 3 years ago, I was homeless in Chicago, pregnant, alone, and convinced I deserved everything that had happened to me. I lost my baby in an emergency room where no one knew my name. I lived in my car. I ate once a day. I thought about dying more times than I can count. The room was silent. I survived because of stubborn determination and incredible luck. But luck shouldn't be a requirement for survival. Safety shouldn't be a luxury. Believing victims shouldn't be radical. She looked directly at the cameras. Sanctuary House is for every woman who's been called a liar, a gold digger, a victim playing pretend. For every woman who's been hit and then asked what she did to deserve it. For every woman who lost a baby because stress and poverty don't care about potential. For every woman who thinks she's alone. Her voice strengthened. You're not alone. You never were. And now you have a place that will believe you, protect you, and help you rebuild. The applause was deafening. Afterward, women lined up, some to volunteer, some to donate, some to whisper their own stories, with shaking voices and grateful tears. A Nigerian woman hugged Chidinma and said, "Sister, you gave us a voice." A Korean grandmother pressed money into her hands and said her daughter had died in a similar situation 30 years ago. One young woman, 19 and 6 months pregnant, asked if she could stay at Sanctuary House. Her boyfriend had just emptied her bank account and disappeared. Chidinma had looked at Park. He'd nodded once. "Yes," Chidinma told her. "You can stay as long as you need, and we'll help you get back on your feet." The girl had broken down sobbing. "Thank you, God, thank you, I thought I had nowhere to go." "You do now," Chidinma said, meaning it with everything in her. "You always will." That night, exhausted and emotionally wrung out, Chidinma collapsed onto their couch. Park sat beside her, pulling her feet into his lap and rubbing them with gentle pressure. "You did something extraordinary today," he said quietly. "We did," she corrected. "None of this happens without you. I wrote checks. You gave them hope." He looked at her with so much pride it made her chest ache. "You took your worst pain and turned it into someone else's salvation. That's not just survival, Yobo. That's revolution." She thought about Derek, about the baby she'd lost, about the girl she'd been in that Chicago ER. That girl would have never believed she'd end up here, loved, safe, powerful enough to help others. "I don't forgive him," she said suddenly. "Derek, I don't forgive him, and I don't think I ever will." "You don't have to," Park said simply. "Forgiveness is optional, healing isn't." "Am I healed?" she asked. "Or am I just better at hiding it?" "You're healing," Park said. "It's not the same as healed, but every day you choose to keep going, every woman you help, every time you tell your story, that's healing in action. That's what strength looks like." She leaned her head back, closing her eyes. "I love you, Saranghae," he whispered. "Always." Outside, Seoul glittered with a million lives in progress. Inside, Chidinma Okafor, survivor, wife, advocate, finally understood that her power had never been in being protected. It was in choosing herself, and then choosing to help others do the same. The girl Derek broke was dead. The woman who rose from those ashes was just getting started. 6 weeks after the mall, Derek Cole sat in a Seoul detention center, waiting for his 3rd court appearance, and tried to remember what his life had looked like before he'd thrown that punch. The memories felt distant, unreal, like they belonged to someone else. Before, a corner office in San Francisco, a salary with six figures, Ashley's engagement ring sparkling on her finger, invitations to industry conferences, LinkedIn endorsements from colleagues who respected him, a carefully curated Instagram showcasing the successful entrepreneur lifestyle, craft cocktails, business class flights, motivational quotes about grinding. After, none of it existed anymore. His termination had been immediate and public. The company issued a statement disavowing him within hours of the footage going viral, citing gross moral violations and fraudulent employment credentials. They'd found the warrants from Chicago, the false references, the background check he'd paid someone to fabricate. Ashley had left him via text message. No conversation, no closure. Just, I saw the records. I saw what you did to those women. To Chidinma. Don't ever contact me again. My lawyers will handle the credit card fraud you committed in my name. He'd tried calling. Her number was blocked. Her social media wiped of any trace of him. She'd posted a statement that had gotten 2 million likes. I dated a monster and didn't know it. To every woman he hurt, I believe you. I'm sorry, I should have seen it sooner. The worst part? She was right. 3 months after the mall. The Korean court system moved slowly, but Park Min-seok's influence moved like lightning. Derek couldn't afford bail. His accounts were still frozen, his credit destroyed. His family had stopped returning calls after the third viral video compilation showing different angles of him screaming at Chidinma. His friends had issued a collective statement on social media distancing themselves from Derek's actions and character. Even his name was poison now. Google searches for Derek Cole returned pages of articles. American man's viral assault reveals pattern of abuse. Serial scammer exposed after Seoul Mall attack. Women across 3 states come forward against Derek Cole. His public defender, a tired woman who clearly drew the short straw, had been blunt. You assaulted someone on camera in front of hundreds of witnesses. The victim is married to one of the most influential men in Korea. Your best option is to plead guilty, show genuine remorse, and hope for leniency. I didn't mean to, Mr. Cole. She'd cut him off with a look of pure exhaustion. I've watched the footage 60 times. I've read the testimonies from 7 different women you've financially abused. I've seen the hospital records from Ms. Okafor's miscarriage. My job is to defend you legally, not morally, so please stop trying to convince me you're a victim. We both know better. The guilty plea came 2 weeks later. The judge's sentence, 18 months in prison, suspended to 6 months with mandatory counseling, anger management, and restitution payments, plus a permanent restraining order keeping him 500 meters from Chidinma at all times. You're fortunate Mrs. Park chose not to pursue maximum sentencing, the judge had said, her voice cold with disgust. She asked for rehabilitation over punishment. I suggest you take that mercy seriously, Mr. Cole, because if you violate any term of this agreement, you'll serve the full 18 months. And given Mr. Park's resources, I imagine prison would be uniquely unpleasant for you. The threat was clear. Park Min-seok had reach everywhere, even behind bars. 6 months after the mall, Dr. Jin's therapy office was small, sterile, and brutally honest. Tell me what you're feeling right now, she said in perfect English, notepad ready. Derek stared at the ceiling. Nothing. Try again. Anger, resentment, like everyone's ganged up on me, like I'm the villain in a story where I'm supposed to be… He stopped. Supposed to be what? The victim, he admitted quietly. I keep thinking about how Chidinma hit me first, how she got me fired, how she ruined my life. Did she ruin your life? Or did your actions have consequences? He'd wanted to argue, to defend himself, but 6 months of therapy had worn down his defenses like water on stone. My actions, he finally said. The words tasted like ash. Walk me through Chicago again, Dr. Jin said. Not the version where Chidinma trapped you, the truth. So he did, slowly, painfully. admitting things he'd buried under justifications and lies. He'd stolen from her. Not borrowed. Stolen. He'd opened credit cards in her name, maxed them out, and disappeared. He'd known she was pregnant and chose to leave anyway. Chose his comfort over her survival. He'd watched her work herself to exhaustion and felt entitled to the money she earned. Felt she owed him for the relationship. He'd blamed her for the miscarriage he'd caused through neglect and abandonment. And when he'd seen her in that mall, successful, healed, loved, his first instinct had been to destroy her again. Because her survival was proof that he'd never been necessary, that she'd been strong enough to build a life without him. That realization had broken something in him. I spent 3 years telling myself she was crazy, Derek said, voice cracking. That she'd exaggerated everything. That I was the one who escaped a toxic relationship. He looked at Dr. Jin with eyes that finally saw clearly. But I was the toxic one. I was the abuser. I destroyed her and called it love. What do you want to do with that realization? I don't know, he whispered. I can't undo it. I can't give her back the baby. I can't erase the trauma. I can't. His voice broke entirely. I destroyed a human being because I was selfish and cruel and I didn't care. For the first time since the mall, Derek Cole cried. Not for himself, for Chidinma, for the girl he'd left bleeding in a hospital, for the baby that had died because he'd valued money over life. I need to apologize, he said finally. I know she won't forgive me. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But she deserves to hear that it wasn't her fault, that she wasn't crazy, that I'm sorry, Dr. Jean had studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Write it. But understand, you're not writing for closure. You're writing because it's the right thing to do. Whether she reads it, responds, or blocks you entirely is her choice, not yours. I understand. 8 months after the mall. The email took Derek 3 weeks to write. He deleted it 17 times, started over, cried through multiple drafts, finally settled on words that felt honest without being self-serving. Chidinma, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect a response. But Dr. Jin says I need to say this anyway, so here it is. I'm sorry. Not sorry I got caught, or sorry it went viral. Sorry for everything I did to you in Chicago. Sorry for stealing your money. Sorry for leaving you pregnant. Sorry for disappearing when you lost our baby. Sorry for spending 3 years calling you crazy when I was the one who was cruel. You didn't deserve any of it. The financial abuse, the abandonment, the gaslighting, none of it was your fault. You were kind and trusting, and I weaponized those qualities against you. That's on me, all of it. I saw you at the foundation opening on the news. You looked happy, strong, like you'd built something beautiful from the worst pain imaginable. I'm glad. You deserve every good thing in your life, including the man who loves you enough to protect you from monsters like me. I'm in therapy now, court mandated, but I'm actually trying, confronting what I did, why I did it, the pattern I've repeated across multiple women, multiple cities. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm just telling you that I finally see the truth. I was wrong. You were right. And I'm sorrier than words can express. I hope you never think about me again. I hope this email doesn't hurt you. I hope you're surrounded by love and safety and all the peace I stole from you. You won. Not because Park destroyed my life, but because you chose to survive me. That takes strength I'll never have. I'm sorry, Chidinma, for everything. Derek. He'd hit send before he could delete it again, then closed his laptop and waited for a response that would never come. The same evening. Seoul. Chidinma opened the email on her tablet while Park cooked dinner in the background, humming something off-key and terrible. She read it once, then again, looking for manipulation, for hidden barbs, for the Derek she knew. But the email was just sad, honest, broken. Park appeared behind her, reading over her shoulder. Do you want me to have him blocked? She thought about the girl who'd loved Derek, about the baby she'd lost, about the 3 years she'd spent thinking maybe she'd deserved it all. Then she thought about Sanctuary House, about the women she'd helped, about the life she'd built with Park, for herself, for others, and realized Derek Cole didn't matter anymore. His apology didn't heal her. His suffering didn't satisfy her. His email didn't change anything. She was already whole. No, she said quietly, closing the tablet. I don't need to block him. I just need to not respond. She deleted the email, felt nothing. No rage, no triumph, no closure, just clean, quiet distance. Park kissed the top of her head. Dinner's ready. What are we having? Jollof rice. I used your mom's recipe. It's probably terrible. She laughed, genuine and bright. I love you. Saranghae, he said, always. Now, I want you to think about something for a second. How many stories have you watched where the abuser just walks away, where there are no consequences, where the woman stays broken? I'm guessing too many. That's why this channel exists, and that's why over 500,000 people have subscribed, because we're building a community that refuses to accept those endings anymore. If you're still watching, if Chidinma's strength resonates with you, if you believe abusers deserve to face what they've done, subscribe. Join us. Your presence here matters. Drop a comment telling Chidinma what you'd say to her if you could. Let's build something bigger than just one story. And just like that, Derek Cole became a footnote in a story that was no longer about him at all. 1 year after the mall, Chidinma stood at the window of Sanctuary House's 6th floor, watching snow fall over Seoul like a blessing. Behind her, the communal room hummed with life, women laughing over dinner, children playing with donated toys, the smell of someone's home cooking mixing with coffee and hope. Mrs. Park? A soft voice pulled her attention. Ji-won, one of their newest residents, stood nervously clutching a folder. 23, pregnant, recently escaped from a boyfriend who'd drained her savings and threatened worse. I got the job. The accounting firm, they hired me. Chidinma's face split into a genuine smile. G1, that's incredible. Because of the reference letter you wrote, because of the interview clothes from the donation closet, because... G1's voice cracked. Because you believed me when everyone else said I was making it up, that he was a good guy and I was just being dramatic. You weren't being dramatic, Chidinma said firmly, taking her hands. You were surviving, and now you're thriving. That's all you. It's you too. Jiwon squeezed back. This place, it saved my life. You saved my life. After Jiwon left, floating on air and new beginnings, Chidinma returned to the window. In the glass reflection, she saw herself, not the broken girl from Chicago, not even the wife of Seoul's underground king, just Chidinma, whole, free, enough. Her phone buzzed. Park's name lit up the screen with a text. Done with meeting, coming to get you. Wear the red scarf. It's cold. She smiled, texting back. So bossy. His reply came instantly. Only because I love you. 10 minutes. Park arrived exactly 10 minutes later, because punctuality was apparently a love language. He stood in Sanctuary House's lobby looking wildly out of place. Designer suit among donated furniture, dangerous reputation among women seeking safety. But the residents had learned to trust him, or at least, trust that he'd never hurt anyone Chidinma cared about. Mr. Park! Little May, 5 years old and staying here with her mother, ran up fearlessly. Look! I drew you! She thrust a crayon masterpiece at him, a stick figure in black with what might have been a smile or possibly a grimace. Park studied it with absolute seriousness. This is excellent. You captured my good side. You only have one side, May giggled. Then you're very talented. He handed it back carefully. Frame this. You'll be famous one day. Chidinma watched from the stairs, her heart doing that stupid flutter thing it still did when he was gentle with children or old people or anyone who didn't expect gentleness from him. He looked up, caught her staring, and his expression shifted into something private and warm. Ready? Always. In the car, one of his more understated vehicles, only mildly bulletproof, Park immediately pulled her into his side, his hand finding hers automatically. "How was your day?" she asked. "Tedious. Negotiations with people who think posturing is strategy." He kissed her temple. "Yours?" "Jiwon got the job. Mrs. Chen's divorce was finalized in her favor. We have 3 new intake applications and 5 volunteers starting next week." She leaned into him. "Good day." "You're changing the world," he said quietly. "One woman at a time." "We're changing the world," she corrected. "I couldn't do any of this without your support." "Chidinma." He tilted her face toward his. "I write checks. You give them hope, safety, futures. Never diminish what you've built." "What we've built." His smile was soft, devastating. "Stubborn woman. You love it. I love you." He kissed her, slow and deep, until the driver cleared his throat awkwardly and they broke apart laughing. That evening, they attended a charity gala, not the one where they'd met, but similar. Glittering people, expensive causes, champagne flowing like water. Chidinma watched Park navigate the room with lethal grace. He was terrifying here. Cold handshakes, calculating eyes, the kind of presence that made politicians nervous and businessmen overly friendly. People bowed deeper to him than strictly necessary. Conversation stopped when he approached, but every 15 minutes, like clockwork, his eyes would find her across the room. And that cold mask would crack just enough for her to see the man underneath, the one who'd spent an hour this morning trying to pronounce her niece's name correctly in Igbo, the one who kept her favorite tea stocked even though he found it an insult to actual tea, the one who was feared by half of Seoul, but who still asked permission before touching her, even after a year of marriage. During dinner, a business associate made the mistake of asking Park about that mall incident. The temperature at the table dropped 10 degrees. "My wife," Park said, voice deadly quiet, "survived more before 25 than you'll experience in your entire life. That incident was a man facing consequences for brutality. If you'd like to discuss it further, we can do so privately." The man went pale. "No, I apologize. I didn't mean—" "Good." Park's hand found Chidinma's under the table, squeezed gently. Then, to everyone else with forced civility. "Anyone else have questions about my personal life they'd like to make professional mistakes with?" Silence. Chidinma bit back a smile. Her husband was absolutely ridiculous and she loved him for it. Later back home, they stood on their balcony despite the cold. Seoul sparkled below them. Millions of lights, millions of lives, millions of stories playing out in real time. "Do you ever think about him?" Park asked quietly. "Derek?" Chidinma considered the question honestly. "Sometimes, when I see residents at Sanctuary House who remind me of who I was, when I read testimonies from women he hurt." She paused. "But not the way I used to. He doesn't live in my head anymore. He's just a thing that happened, past tense." "Good." Park's arms wrapped around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "He doesn't deserve space in your present." "Do you think he's changed?" she asked. "Really changed, I mean?" "I don't know. I don't care." Park's voice was honest, not cruel. "Whether he becomes a better person or stays broken forever isn't your responsibility. Your only responsibility is to yourself, to the women you help, and, if you're feeling generous, to me." She laughed, turning in his arms. "You're my responsibility?" "Absolutely. I'm emotionally dependent on you for softness and humanity. It's very serious." But his eyes were smiling. "Poor baby," she teased, cupping his face. "However do you survive?" "Barely." He kissed her nose. "It's tragic, really." They stood like that for a while, wrapped in each other, in peace, in the quiet certainty of a love that didn't hurt. Snow began to fall again, catching in Chidinma's curls, on Park's shoulders, melting between them like tiny promises. I'm happy, Chidinma said suddenly. Like, genuinely happy, not just better than before or surviving despite. Actually happy. Park pulled back to look at her, his expression unbearably tender. Yeah? Yeah. She felt tears prick her eyes. Good ones. Healing ones. I have work I love, women I'm helping, a husband who terrifies everyone but me, a family we're building together. She gestured to the city below. A whole life I never thought I'd deserve. You always deserved it, Park said fiercely. Every moment of happiness, every piece of peace, every single good thing, you've always deserved all of it. I know that now, she whispered. That's the difference. 3 years ago, I thought suffering was something I'd earned. Now I know joy is something I'm allowed. Park kissed her then, deep and reverent, like she was something holy. When they broke apart, his forehead rested against hers. Saranghae, he murmured. Today, tomorrow, every day after. You're stuck with me. Promise? She asked. Promise. Above them, snow fell on a city that had given her a second chance. Behind them, a home filled with warmth and safety. Ahead of them, a future built on love instead of pain. Chidinma Okafor had been broken once. Left bleeding on an emergency room floor by a man who'd thought her worthless. But she'd survived. Rebuilt. Risen. And now, standing 40 floors above Seoul in the arms of a man who'd burned the world to keep her safe, she understood the most important truth. Her power had never been in being protected. It had been in choosing herself, in loving herself, in building a life so full of purpose and peace that the past couldn't touch her anymore. Derek Cole was gone from her emotional universe, not forgiven, just irrelevant. And that, finally, was freedom. Take me inside, she said softly. It's cold. Park smiled, that dangerous, beautiful smile that was hers alone. Anything you want, Yobo. Always. They walked back into their home together, leaving the past in the snow, stepping into a future that belonged entirely to them. The girl he'd broken was dead. The woman she'd become was just beginning. And if you made it this far without subscribing, I need to ask you something. What are you waiting for? You just spent the last hour watching a woman rise from absolute destruction to build an empire of healing. You watched an abuser face actual consequences. You felt every moment of Park's cold, calculated revenge. And you're still not subscribed? That means you're willing to risk never seeing another story like this. You're gambling that YouTube will recommend part 2, part 3, the other 17 stories I've got ready. Don't be that person. Don't miss the next Chidinma. Subscribe right now, because the next story drops in 3 days, and it's about a woman who fought back even harder, and that beginning looked like victory.